Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do. We are up to 1,108 subscribers, I believe. Help us get to 1,110 before the weekend is over. Alright guys, so today's Ray Bradbury review is the Kilimanjaro Device, which first appeared in 1965 in an issue of Life magazine. Story begins, we have a first-person narrator. He is driving into Ketchum, Idaho. He goes into a bar, sits down next to an old man, begins buying him beers and talking to him. They talk about an old man who was once in this town, but has died and has an sort of a austere gravesite. And the discussion turns to whether his death was a good death, whether he had the right death that was worthy of such a man. This man, who is unnamed, is revealed to have been a writer. They discuss whether they'd read any of his books. The man he's talking to, he says he read a certain type of his story, or knew a guy who read a certain type of his stories. He read stories about bull riding. Another one read a certain other type of story written by this writer. It is then revealed that the narrator believes that he has driven into town in a vehicle that is a time machine. He leaves the bar. He begins driving for a few hours. He eventually picks up an old man. He begins to talk to that old man. He discusses taking him to Africa, back in time in this time machine, and that they will eventually wind up near Kilimanjaro, and that he is supposed to stay there, and that is going to be the end of his life. The story is obviously about Hemingway. The Snows of Kilimanjaro, a very famous Hemingway story, by the way. But Hemingway, he survived a plane crash only to die many years later, sort of a obscure death in Ketchum, Idaho, has a simple grave. And the story is very much about the sentiment of sort of dying at the right time. We see this, I think, time and time again, and it's actually probably more present in our present-day life with the internet, when we find out about people's deaths. And then I was surprised to hear that last year Doris Day died. It's like, I thought she'd been dead for decades. So what happens is people sort of often outlive their fame. And Hemingway didn't outlive his fame, but he outlived sort of the part of his life, sort of the glory years. And that happens time and time again. And this story is very much about that. It's about dying at the right time. And sort of the author here, Bradbury, looking back on Hemingway, sort of had wished that he had died in a better time in his life. He died sort of alone, drunk, sick, unhealthy, and not really, in some people's mind, a death befitting of such a legendary personality. But at the same time, I like to think that's actually a very sort of expected and worthy death for a writer. Writers have this sort of reputation as being tortured souls. There's actually a line in the story about am I confusing this? I think it's from this story, about sort of never having met a writer who was a good talker. Because writers tend to be more personal people, and they can do amazing magical things on the page, but their lives tend to be very different, often harder. And I think in some ways, an austere death for an author is actually probably a good thing. Let your work be immortal. Better for your work to be immortal and sort of have this be on this pedestal than to have sort of you be on the pedestal and sort of absorbed in all the glories of the fame. Let the writing speak for itself. But that is the Kilimanjaro Device, 1965, first appeared in Life magazine. Is it a good story? You know, it's not bad. It sort of walks that line between science fiction and literary fiction, I would say. Is this time machine we're talking about here, is it literal or is it figurative? Is it in this man's imagination? I like to think it's in his imagination. Bradbury leaves it very ambiguous, and I like that. I think that is good fiction in itself. But it's not a fully satisfying story either. A little bit short, a little bit underdeveloped, but also not bad. So what do you think? The Kilimanjaro Device. If you like this story, if you have any opinions on this story, leave a positive comment below. Either way, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you again soon with another review. Next review is the man in the Rorschach shirt. That sounds interesting. Tune in again and find out what the Rorschach shirt is all about. See you later. Enjoy your weekend.